7 men, 7 strangers. Does that not make you a serial killer?
I didn't kill him every day, did I? Did I go out there every day and say, I'm gonna kill? If I did, there would be
Well, no,
hundreds.
it took you 12 months.
Then he brings up Rex again, and that's when I just looked at him and I started stabbing him.
If I had shot my own children, would I not have done a good job of it?
Because, first of all, women generally don't commit crimes this heinous.
Right.
This is usually the domain of men.
That's unfortunate.
Hi, Gabe.
Hey, Danny.
How you doing?
You know what? Things could be better.
Wait, what?
Yeah. Last night, I watched Max Holloway, a great and beloved UFC fighter out of Hawaii, get knocked out for the first time in his career at the age of 32.
So his career is what, like half a year?
No, his career, he's fought since he was like a teenager, like 17, 18.
And that is okay.
Yeah. And to quote someone from RMMA, the subreddit, watching Max get KO'd and Robert Whittaker.
KO'd means knocked out.
Yes. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Watching Max get KO'd and Robert Whittaker get submitted for the first time in 13 years is RMMA's 9/11.
You cannot say that.
I'm quoting someone. That is what they wrote. I sent the screenshot to your brother last night because he watched the fight with me.
Yeah.
He and his wife. It was great. Having them over, not the knockout and the watching Robert's jaw get broken.
Ooh.
Oh, yeah.
Ouch.
He tapped. For those of you not familiar with fighting, tapping is when you literally tap someone on a part of their body to say you give up.
Yeah.
When you're caught in a submission, which is a technique meant to either block your airway, break a joint, strain a ligament. Break a jaw. So it was a face crank. You know the choke where it's the arm around the neck?
Yeah.
It's called a rear naked choke. Sometimes you can put your forearm, or across their face like this.
Don't cover your mouth. Yeah.
And if your squeeze is tight enough, you can dislocate their jaw. And I saw a photo of Robert post-fight. And what happened is he got the front of his jaw broken in. So his teeth, like the teeth are attached to the jaw and it's like pushed into his mouth now.
Oh my gosh. Why do you watch this?
Oh, it's awesome.
I'm not going to say it's worse than football, but it's way more violent.
I think that's a toss-up. MMA as a sport is relatively new, so we haven't really seen the fallout of what it does to someone.
Interesting.
But
I mean, they don't fight till they're like in their 60s, right? When's the average retirement?
Well, it'll vary quite wildly, but some guys have made it up until their mid-40s with success.
Ancient.
Yeah. No, in sports, it really is, yeah. There's sort of for those of you who don't know, on a much, much smaller level, I have competed, and I can tell you, and I've been to gyms where you have professional fighters, and fighters tend to be superstitious.
In high school, he was part of a fight club that we don't talk about.
That is true.
Where they would go to these empty like buildings where nobody worked at night because they're home, and they would like use the light of their cars and have like actual fights.
How did you know about that?
I knew back then.
But you never went to one of them.
Absolutely not. I thought it was ridiculous.
I'm so amused. I honestly didn't know you knew about those days.
Of course I knew.
I think
I've heard stories about them.
Yeah, I know Kobe has gone.
Yes.
Did Kobe ever fight?
Yes.
Who did he fight?
I don't remember.
Damn, I would have liked to have seen who he fought. I can't remember either. But yeah, so I personally love it for all of its downsides and pain. But rough night. Mm-hmm.
Cool.
But how are you?
Great. My idol didn't lose a fight, so top notch.
I wouldn't call him an idol. He's a fan favorite. He's a...
Okay, I don't have any, I don't know. I don't follow sports or anything, so
fair enough.
I'm good. Yeah, nothing like that. We did recently learn there's a leak in our bathroom, and I was like, cool. What does this mean? And it essentially means we need to open up the walls, which means taking out the shower tile, which then means essentially they're going to find something behind the shower, and then we need a whole bathroom remodel. So
When you say a leak, does that mean one of the pipes is leaking water when you turn it on?
No. So we figured out it was leak. Well, first our shower started just dripping, like even though it was off. And then we noticed on the exterior wall of our bathroom, like some water coming out of our slab foundation.
Okay.
And I was like, uh-oh. And there's this little thing called, I don't even remember what it's called. But if you have a slab foundation next to your bathroom outside, there's like a little peephole you can pry off and look inside the wall. And we looked in and you could essentially see daylight coming through the shower tile, which you're not supposed to.
Whoa, okay.
Yeah. So there's a leak in the tile that we put duct tape on, and that fixed it. But it's still dripping nonstop and it's getting worse. And to fix the drip, it's when you have to take off the tile to go in to get to the valve.
Sorry, one more time. So it's not water out of the pipes. It's water, like you shower and this water seeps through the house, essentially.
Yeah, so there's like multiple issues. There's the one that the tile is just not waterproof and water's leaking through, but we fixed that with duct tape.
Mm-hmm.
But then there's the problem number 2, that is our shower is just dripping nonstop.
Okay.
So to fix problem number 2, you cannot use duct tape. You have to go into the wall.
Well, come on. If you use enough duct tape, it'll work.
It won't. I don't know. Yeah, I'm just like trying. I don't know. We're going to call a plumber on Tuesday. Send your prayers.
Yeah.
Thanks.
All I got is thoughts, unfortunately.
Well, I'll take those too. And that's, other than that though, I'm really good. Yeah. I've been busy at work and that's my life.
Sounds, I mean, yeah, aside from, I guess, the bathroom stuff, good to hear. It's all going well.
Yeah. I do have something that makes me very happy and also makes you very happy and will make you feel better.
Ecstasy.
No.
Well, it would.
Would it? Do you remember Molly? Wasn't that ecstasy?
Yeah.
That was huge. Is it still huge?
Probably in some circles.
I also have drinking like almost all of an energy drink in less than 20 minutes.
I'm still only halfway through my tea.
Oh, I think it's starting to hit. Anyways.
Just like the Molly.
Don't do drugs, kids.
Also, don't listen to this if you're a child.
Actually, yeah, don't. This story is... We're not going to get into the story yet because I have news.
Yes. What is the news?
We have new Patreons.
Oh, yes. Thank you for the reminder.
Yes. And they have been avid listeners since the beginning. They are friends. And I did not ask them to be Patreons. If anything, I tried to tell people we know to not be Patreons.
I tell people we know to not listen.
That too, yes.
Yeah.
But they have ignored that and continue to listen, and they are amazing. They always give us feedback. They tell us what episodes they really like. And they're awesome. And their name is Mare and Davey. I did not ask them if I can call out their names. So this will be a surprise to them because we're going to do it.
Oh, man, I hope they want us to call out their names.
I don't know. But yeah, they're amazing. They're super awesome people. And I'm glad they're part of our Patreon. We're aiming to release something once a month.
Yes.
Currently, it's probably going to be every other month because we're trying to release something before the end of this month.
For Halloween.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, we're aiming for once a month, something new on Patreon. So it's either going to be her story or Her Tale We Tell, which is like a short story of a woman. So yeah, very cool stuff. I gotta say, our first Her Tale We Tell is a really good one.
Yep.
And we have a Her Story also that will be coming out that is also a really good one.
Man, we have so much content ready.
We have so much content. So
we're ahead of the game.
We're catching up, guys.
Just in time for the holidays.
Yeah. Where people are going on road trips.
Yes. Oh, by the way, I'll be in Japan for... I told you this, but I'm telling the listeners.
I actually didn't know it was Japan. You just were like, I'm going to be gone for 3 weeks. And I was like, okay.
Yeah. Well, it will be Japan.
Okay.
And I will be there for 3 weeks from basically the first week, after the first week of November until more or less the last week of November.
Are you missing Thanksgiving?
No, I'll be back just in time for it.
Okay. Yeah. You got to get that turkey.
Yeah, turkey is so overrated. Well, you're vegetarian. You don't even eat turkey.
I don't.
Yeah.
But I did. My favorite part of Thanksgiving was leftover turkey and making a sandwich.
Yeah. Damn.
That was my absolute favorite part. I didn't like pumpkin pie.
Really? That's the only, like, that and carrot cake, which is not a pie, are the only like pie things I actually enjoy.
Carrot cake is my favorite. Just the frosting though.
The frosting can be anything, right?
Cream cheese frosting is traditional.
Oh, well, screw tradition.
So you like the actual carrot cake?
Yeah,
weird.
I like the carrot
what about
parts.
Cheesecake?
Cheesecake is okay. I've had really good ones, but anything that's like too decadent, and I can't for too long.
I was at Costco and they had pumpkin pie and pumpkin cheesecake, and I was standing there. I was like, Kobe's favorite thing in the world is pumpkin pie, so I usually get him a pumpkin pie to surprise him. I was like, maybe I should get pumpkin cheesecake, but I didn't.
Wow.
Yeah, he likes cheesecake, but he doesn't like flavored cheesecake. So
I can get that.
I don't need to eat a whole cheesecake by myself.
You don't need to, but you can.
I can, but I did get cookies and ate like 5 of them in the car. So
How big were the Costco cookies? The giant ones?
no, they were mini ones. They're like this big and they had cinnamon in them. Super good.
It's not too bad.
I know, but okay, we have a long one today.
Yes.
I've gone into a like kind of a wormhole of just men cheating on their wives. So it's another one of those.
I hope that's not for any personal reason.
Oh, absolutely not. Okay. You think either of us have the like energy to cheat? No. So I think it's because I started off on one and then I'll see a comment that's like, this is similar to this story. And then I just dive into that one. And then I see another comment and then I dive into that one.
Oh, no.
And then the algorithm picks up and that starts getting messy. But so we have another one, but it's different because they're all different. And this one is its own story. And we're going to start off. It is very similar to Betty Broderick.
Okay.
But it's also very different. Are you ready to find out how?
Sure.
So we're going to start on April 23rd, 2018.
Very recent. Okay.
Yes, very recent. So Mark is the husband and his wife is named Jennair. And Mark is leaving for his job and he tells Jennair that he still loves her, even though they're like in the process of getting divorced. It's very, very messy. And she usually gets teary-eyed after he says this. Oh, by the way, I read a book that Mark wrote.
The husband.
Yes.
Spoiler alert, he doesn't die, apparently.
He might have written it before all of this. I'm just going to say I read a book that he wrote.
Okay.
You will know within 5 minutes of whether or not he dies. Okay, here we go. So, she usually gets teary-eyed after he says he loves her, but this time she doesn't. They have plans to meet up for dinner after she goes and sees their divorce coach. And a divorce coach is not a lawyer, it's not a therapist, but it's somebody to help listen and mediate and get you through the process of divorce. So it's like similar to a therapist, but focuses on people getting divorced.
So it's a therapist who didn't put in their 3,000 hours to get licensed. Got
Sure.
it.
Yeah, okay. And she was also scheduled to have a possible hysterectomy the following day, depending on what they discovered during surgery. So Jennair's obviously going through some stuff.
Yeah.
Mark is at his second week of his new job as a creative director for an international luxury resort company. Not that important.
Damn, that's what I wanted to be when I grew up.
He gets like 2 free vacations to travel to like one of their resorts a year, and it's a pretty nice gig. So on his way to his new job, he decides to grab his affair partner a Starbucks coffee and drop it off. Her name is Meredith.
Oh no, we just shouted out Meredith.
Oh, we did! Meredith! Let's just dedicate this episode to you.
Yeah.
So not that you would ever cheat, don't worry.
Yeah.
So then he makes sure to turn off his location services on his phone so that his wife won't be able to see where his affair partner lives. He then drops off the coffee, goes to work, and throughout the workday texts Meredith date ideas and like the usual pleasantries that you share with a partner, like how's your day going, thinking of you, that kind of thing. Around 5:30 p.m. he texts his wife asking where she wants to get dinner, and she names a place. Right? Confusing, right?
Yeah.
He's still with his wife, but he also has an affair partner. The wife knows. We will go way into it. So He goes to the restaurant that she names. He sits down, orders a drink for himself and a glass of wine for his wife. At 5:50, she texts him that she's running late and made a wrong turn. At 6 p.m., she texts him freaking out that he took their dog, and he's confused because she had gone home to let the dog, or she had called a neighbor asking them to let the dog out. The neighbor went in and couldn't find the dog, but then the neighbor finds the dog and it's all good. She texts him, she's like, we found the dog. At 6:10, she texts him a picture of a pile of garbage with a used condom on top and says, "You fucked her." Mark?
What is happening?
It is...
Wait, hold on. Wasn't she supposed to meet him for dinner?
Yeah, so he's at the restaurant waiting for...
40 minutes at this point.
Yeah. He's at the restaurant waiting for her, and she's texting him that she's running late because she made a wrong turn. And then she's upset about the dog, and then she sends a picture of a pile of garbage with a condom. And then she texts him, or he responds, and he says, "I don't know what you're talking about. This photo is disturbing in so many ways." Jennair says, "Then she cheated on you." And then a few minutes later, "You ruined my life. I hope you never find happiness. Bye, Mark." And then silence. Mark realizes that the picture of the garbage with the condom on top is taken at Meredith's home.
Oh boy. Is Meredith okay?
Well, Mark calls her, he sends her several texts, and he's not hearing back, which is really odd because Meredith always has her phone on her. And so he rushes over to her house and looks inside through a window. He sees Meredith laying face down in the doorway between the kitchen and dining room. He realizes the front door is unlocked, and he rushes inside and goes to Meredith. And then he notices blood on the walls and on Meredith. So he runs outside, and there's a neighbor outside, and he yells at the neighbor to call 911. And then he runs back inside and is trying to find a pulse on Meredith, and he doesn't feel any, but her body is still warm. So he's like, maybe she's still alive.
Chest compressions.
Yeah. But then he notices the pool of blood surrounding her head, and he is like, oh, I don't think she's still alive. And then the 911 operator tells him to leave the house.
Why?
It's a crime scene. I think after he describes what happens, the 911 operator knows she's not alive. And you don't want to contaminate the crime scene.
That's true. But the body was still warm, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Because he's not a doctor. The 911 operator...
She's dead.
Okay, so we're certain she's dead.
Yes. Yeah.
She just called her. Or she just called him.
Yeah. Well, across the room, he sees a figure on the floor. It is Jennair.
His wife.
Yep. And both women are pronounced dead at the scene.
It was a murder-suicide.
Mm-hmm.
That is intense.
How did we get here? Let's flashback to 1986.
So 30 years? What even is this? 40 years?
I don't know. A long time ago. Yeah. 30.
30s?
30.
Almost 30, actually.
No, almost 40.
What is math?
I don't know.
So we went from 2018
to 1986.
to 1986. That is 32 years.
Oh, I was off. Almost 40. Okay. So Mark and his friend go to Taco Bell.
Wait, how old is Mark?
Oh gosh, he's 47 in 2018. So how old is he?
Oh, so when he was 15.
There you go.
Okay, so now he's 15 years old.
Actually, I think he might have been 16. 15 or 16.
Okay, 15, 16 in 1986.
Yes.
Okay. Go.
And he goes to Taco Bell as somebody who's 15 and 16 does, not 30.
Very true.
Oh no, I still go.
No, I mean, it's not a bad thing that you still go. It's just when you're a teenager, that's what you can afford. So I very much used to go to Taco Bell with a friend of mine.
Oh yeah, all the time.
Yeah.
Especially at that age. So Mark goes, places his order, but he immediately takes notice of the woman taking his order, and he is just smitten. She's gorgeous. Blonde hair, blue eyes, striking face. But that was it. He got his food and left, and they parted ways. And he would occasionally see her when their high school sports teams would play against each other, and he always noticed her. But he just assumed she wouldn't remember him, and she never approached him, so, just a crush. Mm-hmm. Then, one day in 1990, so he would be, 20, 19?
Me would, yeah.
Around there. His car battery died, so he went into an auto shop And there she was, sitting in the waiting room. And they made eye contact, and she goes, I meant to look up how to say his last name. I'm so sorry, I'm going to mess this up. Are you a Gerardot? Gerardot.
Ardot. I don't actually know. I thought you were trying to say Gerardo, and I was like, Gerardo's fine, but that's Ecuadorian? I have to know this now.
Okay. I mean, just to be clear, he does look white. He has blonde hair, I think blue eyes. He's handsome in a, like, I don't know, standard way.
Standard way? Like he's conventionally attractive.
Yeah, like he's like he's okay.
Oh, so it's a French variant of the name Gerardot, which is spelled roughly. It
sounded French when I said it.
Okay,
I was
no idea.
Like, oh yeah, because I always say French words completely wrong.
Yeah, French is not my strong suit.
Yeah.
I think you got it.
Mm-hmm. So she asks him and makes conversation, and he goes, "You're Jennair, aren't you?" And they just like hit it off. However, Mark at the time, and they by hit it off, they kept talking.
Yeah.
And Mark had a girlfriend at the time, and Jennair insisted he either break things off with the girl or he doesn't call her again because she refuses to be the other woman.
Foreshadowing.
But also she, I don't know how to put it, good for her. That's what I'm trying to say. And Mark was this dorky, awkward guy in school, and Jennair was this cool, independent woman. And so he broke up with his girlfriend and started dating her.
Is Jennair older than him?
She's 2 years younger.
Okay, when you keep saying, so she's 14.
Well, now they're 20, right?
Oh, right, because we flash forwarded. So, but she's 18, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And Jennair had one sister and grew up in a lower middle class income bracket, but her parents made sure to give her every opportunity they never had. She went to a private Catholic school. She was raised Catholic, but was this independent thinker and didn't agree with the Catholic lifestyle. So by age 17, she actually moved in with her grandparents. And she had a lot of drive and did great in school while managing 1 to 2 part-time jobs, as was her MO. They started to date when they're in their early 20s, and they dated for a few months and were just in love. Then Mark met Jamie, and he fell for her. So he says he broke up with Jennair, but there was a few people who questioned if they actually broke up during this time, if that makes sense. But he started, dating Jamie, who ended up dumping him. And after being dumped, Mark ran back to Jennair, and they got back together and dated a year before moving in together.
Damn.
Mark ended up getting a job a few hours away, so they did long distance, and Mark feared them growing apart. And actually, during this time, Jennair was thinking of breaking up with him. But then, when she's telling him this, he pulls out a ring and proposes to her.
That's quite the Hail Mary.
Yeah. And they got married on October 23rd, 1993.
What is it about the damn ring that turns I'm thinking of breaking up with this guy to, oh yeah, my whole life? Sure.
Yeah. Yep.
I don't get it.
I don't get it either. And the entire first chapter of the book that Mark wrote, he lives. So this is post his affair partner and wife's murder-suicide.
Yeah. I got the impression when he found his affair partner and wife dead.
And so he wrote a book about the experience, and yeah. So the whole first chapter of the book, he spends gushing about how much he loves how honest and blunt Jennair was. And then he starts to twist it and say she was controlling of his life because she was honest about not liking some of his friends and his attire, and it was just, I don't know, it was just weird.
The book is going to give this story a quite an interesting twist, because Mark is not going to be as honest as we would like, given the outcome of this story.
Yes. I mean, yeah. I wouldn't recommend reading the book personally in my Danny's book review, just because it's low-key infuriating. But he comes off as incredibly narcissistic. He'll say things, but it's like, woe is me kind of thing. And you're like, these two women are dead because of actions you took. Take some responsibility. And then like the last chapter, he kind of does, but like in a way that's like, oh, but it's so difficult for me. Like, I know my actions did this, but think about how they affected me. And you're just like, what the heck? Like, I don't know. Anyways.
Yeah, it's a pretty telltale sign of a narcissist.
Yeah.
I'll push back a little on his actions certainly led to the death of these two women.
We are not done.
Oh, okay.
We're not done.
This is already a pretty interesting start. We don't typically get this kind of perspective.
No, it's very interesting. So they married young and money was tight, as it is when you're young. And Jennair was a waitress. Mark did some like entry-level job in marketing. They saved and they moved up in jobs and ended up buying their first home in 1998, back when it was like, you know, doable for people to do on low income. Not low income, but you know. And Mark described Jennair as a hoarder and possessive. And he tells the story of how one time he decided to clean their like apartment before they got their house. And she had been saving magazines for like 5 years. And he decided, oh, I'm just going to throw them away. And he doesn't ask her like, or even say why she was saving these magazines or if she had plans for them or if they were meaningful to her. He just said she had magazines that were 5 years old and he threw them all away. And when she came home, she was really, really upset and went into the garbage and pulled them out. And he never once like gives her point of view of why she, like, maybe there was a reason, maybe she was a hoarder, but then like say there wasn't a reason. The fact that he just left it out.
Why would he even tell that story?
He told so many stories. He was trying to paint her in a bad light.
Okay, a hoarder is someone who has like a bunch of stuff to the point where it's affecting their life. Was that all of his evidence that she's a hoarder, that she kept some magazines that were 5 years old?
Yeah. I mean, he said she would like keep things like that. But also then later on, he talks about how she was like always extremely clean and like extremely organized and all this stuff. So there's a lot of things like that. And it's part of, I think, why the book got such bad reviews is that he would say things and then say something else. And then I watched a bunch of interviews that he was in and he would say something in the interview that contradicted what he said in the book.
Oh, yeah.
And I'll bring up one later on. But anyways, they obviously, like, you know, being in a relationship is difficult. But when they did fight, it does seem like it was more intense than I would say an average relationship is. Like, they would yell. And I mean, I've never been in an argument where I yelled. Like, that's, yeah. And after they bought this house, they spent 7 years fixing it up. And Mark says that they had so much fun during this time. And I'm just like, what the hell? Fixing up a house is not fun. But, you know, whatever. Maybe it was for them. And during this time, they both had decent jobs and they started to feel financially secure. And then in 2001, Mark decides to quit his job and open his own advertising agency, which was agreed upon by both of them. And then Jennair lost her job a few years later and ended up, his company started to be pretty successful. Like, it had actual employees and an office building. So it was like a 900 square foot office building, but that's not bad. I think 600. But still. So she went and started working for his company. And in 2000, and I mean, it was fine. The employees seemed like they didn't like love her because she kind of came in with no, like, she was just the husband's wife. Yeah. And she was hired because she lost her other job. So it seemed like there was some issues with that. But other than that, I mean, it seemed fine. And in 2004, on a business trip to Berlin, Mark was at a bar with, and then in the book, he's like, she just like hated my best friend and I have no idea why. It didn't make any sense. And then the next paragraph, he tells this story. Okay. He was at a bar with his best friend. Mm-hmm. They got drunk. And the next morning, Mark woke up next to an Austrian woman. And Mark asked his friend, he's like, why'd you let that happen? And the best friend was like, well, you seemed happy. Why not? And so obviously the wife was like, if your best friend's going to encourage that behavior, Come on. But okay. So then she sends.
Wait, but hold on. Was he blackout drunk? Like, what was the... how did he not know?
He knew.
How?
What do you mean, how?
How did he know?
How did he know what?
How do you wake up next to someone and go like, how did I get here?
Oh, he didn't. He just woke up next to a woman and he was like, why'd you let that happen, to his best friend?
Okay.
And his best friend was like, you seemed happy. Seemed like a good time. Anyways, so then when Mark gets home, he sends an email to his friend about what happened, and Jennair sees this email. And so she sends an email to the friend pretending to be Mark to try and get more information. But instead of emailing back, the friend calls Mark to talk. And Mark realizes Jennair had emailed the friend pretending to be him and knew about the one-night stand.
Mark's in the wrong, but Jennair should not be emailing people posing as Mark.
Yes, absolutely not. As you will see in this case and the previous one we talked about, it's not a healthy relationship.
Yeah.
And they went to marriage counseling and worked on trusting each other again. And then so that was 2004. And then in 2005, the housing market was crazy. So they sold their house and upgraded to a much larger, grander home.
Sorry, what year?
2005.
Oh, right before the crash. Good timing.
That was horrible timing.
No, because they sold their house
And then bought a much bigger house.
Well, yeah. Well, the sale was a good timing.
Yeah. And then after buying this really large house, they invest about $100,000 into it. And then the market starts to crash. In 2009, their business started to kind of go downhill because a lot of people weren't, it was a housing crash, but a lot of companies felt the results of this. And,
of course.
Yeah. And his was the same. They lost a lot of their clients. And so both of them were incredibly stressed and started to fight more. And Mark, this was a weird story that I just have to mention because it was so weird.
Yeah.
Mark has ADD. And
ADHD?
He says ADD.
Okay.
And around this time, he decides to start taking Adderall to help. And he says that, it was mostly for Jennair that he decided to try it, not just him. And while it helped him focus, by dinner time it made him really groggy and upset. And he began to get into more fights with Jennair. And he blames the Adderall, so he stops taking it. And I know a lot of people who take Adderall, and I've never heard it affecting somebody like that.
It can. There's different types. There's slow release types that are meant to be to prevent things like this. And so it's not like this bigger spike in focus that then wanes throughout the day. It's more like evenly distributed. But honestly, it affects people differently. But being groggy and grumpy and irritable is one of the symptoms.
Okay, well, it affected him like that. And so he stopped taking it.
I wouldn't recommend that. I would just talk to your psychiatrist and work out a better dosage.
Well, that's not, maybe no, he stopped taking it. So then Mark he really scales down his company. He fires all his employees, and Jennair ends up getting a marketing job for an insurance company. But Mark, he continues to work for himself, just on a scaled down scale.
Yep. Hell, that happened to me during COVID. I lost clients and, that sucked.
Yeah. And Mark ends up getting a really good job offer in South Carolina. So they decide to list their house and move to South Carolina for a fresh start. After they move to South Carolina, they adopt 2 golden retrievers. Jennair gets a job in marketing. They focus on paying off their debt they have accrued with that giant house, and they work on that for the next 5 years. So the years 2012 to 2016 in South Carolina are ultimately described as great. They went hiking, ziplining, they tried out new restaurants, bars, and they had really a good time, a stable time. But then unfortunately, Jennair gets let go during layoffs at her company, and she spent months looking for a new job but was unable to find one. So she eventually took a job as a grocery checkout person, and they cut down on their living expenses. So Mark starts to look for jobs in other places since now was a solid time to move and start fresh again. And it just, some people are like that. They just want to move and find new places to settle down. And
I respect that. The world's a big place.
And he sees a job in Delaware and applies for it. And he says that this opportunity just like really spoke to him. But part of me wonders if it was the picture he saw of Meredith, the person he would be reporting to, that really drew him in.
Moving states because of a photo of a woman is wild.
I mean, he says that the opportunity seemed great. So that was pure speculation on my part.
Okay.
And so he sends in his resume and also emails her directly. And he says that, this sounds like an amazing opportunity. He really hopes, I can't remember. It was a very professional email that he wrote to her. And she responded and said that his resume looked great and she would appear. And they're hoping to hire somebody by this time frame and, that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And so then he continues to apply to other jobs as well. But during this time, they're kind of just, he's at his job. He's not super happy. She's working as a grocery store checkout person. And this year is 2017. And do you remember that eclipse that happened in 2017 where Trump was president and looks up at it?
Yes.
Well, there's this video of Mark and Jennair at an eclipse party, and you can just Google it and watch it, and they look really happy. It just stuck out to me because they're at this party and people were videoing, and they were he had his arms around her and they had the eclipse glasses on and they're looking up and pointing and smiling, and you just would have no idea that behind closed doors they were just so unhappy. And
it's a lot of relationships, unfortunately.
Yeah. And apparently nope, that was Meredith, just kidding. So then Mark ends up getting the job in Delaware. Mm-hmm. And so they need him to start ASAP. So he goes and just immediately moves to Delaware while Jennair stays and ties up loose ends in South Carolina and packs up their stuff. And she keeps the dogs while he goes to Delaware to settle in. And the plan is she's going to join Mark in 45 days. Mark mentions how he was worried about working for someone so much younger than him with less experience because she was 15 years younger than him. He was 47, so she was 32, 33. But after sitting with Meredith for 5 minutes, he's suddenly so excited to be working with her because she came off as intelligent, bright, and, this is a quote from him, a superstar without limits.
She's 32. She's not 24. Yeah. Why would he assume?
Because he has 15 years of experience on her, at least. So I think part of him was nervous about she'll be his boss, his direct boss.
Yeah, but they're working marketing, right?
Yeah. New
technologies have radically changed marketing. When Mark was 24, the marketing landscape looked very different than when Mark is 47.
I have an answer that I'm guessing. Maybe it's because he's a white male who's not used to reporting to a younger female.
But he called her a superstar without limits. He did. And that totally wasn't because he was attracted to her.
According to him, it absolutely was not. According to him, at this time, he did not even notice she was attractive, which is baloney because everybody's yeah, she was attractive. It's something you notice.
Also, pure physical attractiveness, that's what else do you notice about someone on first impression?
Yeah, exactly. But he says that the way she spoke, she came off as just so intelligent and she knew so much, and he was really excited to work with her because of that.
Maybe she was all of those things, but also the halo effect is real.
Yeah, I don't know. The fact that he was I absolutely did not notice she was attractive that first meeting.
Stop.
And I'll tell you the story of when he says he first realized that she was attractive. So on the 4th day of working there, he was invited to this important shareholder meeting. And he says that Meredith and him, she bounced the ball to him and he bounced it back to her. And they just really had great energy and vibed. And after that meeting, Meredith asks him if he wants to go get a quick drink and debrief from the week because they hadn't actually talked for the first 4 days because he was in training and then had meetings and stuff. Gabe's giving me a look.
I am a little suspicious of her intentions.
Absolutely. And I will mention now that it later came out that her and her husband were having issues. They hadn't been physically together in like over a year at that point.
Oh.
Yeah. And so yeah, maybe she did have ulterior motives. I don't know. Maybe she just wanted to get a drink and like learn more about him. But that drink is, Mark says, the first time he like really realized she was attractive.
I think that was the first time he realized she was attracted to him.
Maybe, yeah. He says that he expected it to be like a 20 to 30 minute meeting where they just like talk about work, but it ended up being over 3 hours and they didn't even get to talk about work.
That's called a date.
Yeah. And so Meredith invites him to go get dinner Saturday evening because her husband would be out of town on a hunting trip. And they met up for pizza, and after a glass of wine, Mark admits to her that he has and this is the word he used, a professional crush on her.
What is a professional crush?
I don't know, but she agrees with him that it is mutual.
I'm shocked.
Yeah. And within 2 weeks, they had kissed and were texting cutesy texts to each other nonstop.
Gross.
Like he, in his book, he shares, and online you can see some of the texts they shared, and it was like freaking high schoolers. Like at one point, he's at a Wawa, W-A-W-A. It's like a super popular convenience store. Do you know what they are?
I'll take your word for it.
Okay. More so in the South area.
Okay.
And so he's at a Wawa, and it's like her favorite convenience store for some reason. I don't know. Maybe it's like a Buc-ee's or something.
People have a favorite convenience store.
Yeah.
I just go to the nearest one.
Okay. Well, it's her favorite. So he texts her and he's like, hey, I'm at the store. Do you want anything? And she texts back. She's like, yeah, can you grab me some fruit? Like cut up fruit. And he's like, yeah, what do you want? And she's like, anything but bananas. And he's like, I hate bananas too. And she's like, that's bananas. It's just like text like that, you know?
Okay, that could have been worse.
Well, no, I don't know. There's like cringy stuff, like there's smiley faces. And anyways, they literally one night they spent over 7 hours texting each other nonstop.
Have a phone call, wrap it up in 30 minutes, go on about your day.
Or just freaking go see each other. But apparently after that first kiss, Mark had told Meredith they couldn't do this and they had to end things.
After the first kiss?
Yeah.
But wasn't that like a while back now?
Yeah, it did not last. So 2 days later, he had a job interview that had been set up before he got this job, and it was in Denver, and he went to this job interview, and Denver was the place he and his wife always wanted to live. They had gone on a vacation there. They fell in love. It was like their dream. And so that's why he had applied to this job. Mm-hmm. And while there, he's like, I don't want this job because then I won't be near Meredith. So even though it was him and his wife's dream, he decides while at the airport, I don't want this job. And he doesn't take it. And he texts Meredith and he says, 3 things I know. 1, you are my hero. 2, I would take a bullet for you. And 3, no more lines.
No more lines?
Yeah. So what he's saying is like they had set a boundary of let's keep this professional. And he's saying, let's remove that.
Okay. So then after this came all the texts and stuff.
Yeah. So the whole I can't do this lasted a full on like 1.5 days. Wow. Less than 48 hours.
That willpower.
Yeah. And 3 weeks after the new job started, one of the golden retrievers that they had adopted wasn't doing well. So Mark, they were older. One of them was 9, and I think one of them was 10. And so they were older for that kind of dog. And one of them wasn't doing well. So Mark returns to be with the dog and Jennair while they put the golden down. And while he was home, he's talking about Meredith to Jennair, like, oh, she's amazing. She's such a great boss, like blah, blah, blah. Like he just can't keep his mouth shut to his wife about this woman that he's having an affair with. And Jennair keeps asking him, like, is something happening? Like, is something going on? He's like, no, absolutely not. It's not like that. And so then Jennair says to him, don't fall in love with her. And he responds, of course not. It's not like that. And keep in mind, he's cheated on her at least once before.
Yes.
And also, like, there was the whole Jamie situation where he, like, possibly didn't quite break up with Jennair before starting to see Jamie.
Yeah.
And I don't know. He's had some questionable actions beforehand. And he also didn't tell Jennair about the woman. Even if he was blackout drunk, he should have told her.
I'm fully on board that he has shown a pattern of infidelity.
Yes. So she obviously noticed that he's talking about Meredith, and he continues to be like, no, nothing's happened. And that is called gaslighting, because he starts to make her feel like she's crazy.
Yep.
And he returns home, and he and Meredith decide, let's go to a basketball game together. So they work at this college that I should have written the name down. It doesn't matter. It's a college in Delaware. And so they decide to go to a basketball game together for the college. And it was a huge risk because previously they were very careful about where they'd go so they're not seen. But anyways, it was such a high adrenaline rush going to this game together. And afterwards in the car, they said, I love you for the first time. 4 weeks after meeting each other.
Gross.
And just Jennair and Mark have been married for 24 years at this point.
Wow, that is a long time.
That is a long time. Like, a long time. Meredith is only 32, 33.
Mm-hmm.
Their marriage is 2/3 her age. So.
Meredith is also married.
Meredith is also married. And her husband will come back into play. And I gotta say, I think he's the only one who comes out of this looking like he handled it well.
Okay.
And Meredith and Mark knew the timeline and that each day was getting closer and closer that Jennair was coming back to Delaware. So they spent as much time together as possible. Like, they would make out at work behind closed doors. And
you know, they can do that even if Jennair is in the same state because she's not at work.
But I'm just pointing out that they are disgusting. Okay. So Jennair ends up, the day comes, she moves in, and her and Mark explore their new neighborhood, and Jennair applies to job after job, but she keeps having trouble finding one. And Mark even says that he thinks part of it is because of her age. He thinks there's like an ageism, and then like because of that, and also at this point it's been over a year since she's worked outside of the like grocery shop jobs, so it's just hard for her. And as you know, she was like a really independent woman previously, so this is really messing with her confidence, and she's kind of beginning to look like a shell of herself. And she, during this whole ordeal, it's 6 months between the time that Mark starts his affair and then she ends up doing the murder-suicide. 6 months is all. Mm-hmm. And during that time, she lost 20 pounds for a woman that was already thin. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it was a rough time for her. And on New Year's Eve 2017, they're getting into bed, and Jennair asks Mark if something's wrong, and he continues to say no. And she's like, are you cheating on me? And he's like, no. And this goes on for an hour. She's relentless because she's like, I need to know. And he's like, no. And she's like, she finally, what does she say? She's like, tell me, you pussy, or stop being a pussy and tell me. And he finally says, no, like not admitting to the affair. He says, I want out of this relationship. And things don't go well. And he even backpedals and tells her he doesn't mean it and to forget what he said. But obviously she can't. And Jennair's like, is it Meredith? And he says no.
Why backpedal? Why not leave the relationship?
Because he's undecided. He says that. So also, here's a direct quote from the book written by Mark. She pressed and pressed about Meredith, but I denied it like my life depended on it. The stakes were just too high. I was Meredith's direct report, and while I hadn't read the UD employee handbook cover to cover, I knew it wouldn't look good for either of us. More importantly, I hadn't actually made the decision to leave Jennair. In fact, I was still struggling with the thought of it. I needed time.
Why?
Like, do you see how narcissistic that sounds? He's literally gaslighting his wife, telling her he's not cheating because he's like, I'm not sure if I'm ready to leave her. Like, maybe I want to keep her. And therefore, lying is the right thing to do.
But why does he want to keep her? They don't have kids, right?
No, they just have the dog. He just isn't sure he actually wants to leave that relationship. They've been together 24 years. I think he does in a way love her. And part of me wonders if this whole affair thing is just he absolutely denies this. He says he was fully in love with Meredith, but part of me wonders if maybe he's getting close to 50. This younger woman who's very attractive showed interest. Maybe part
midlife crisis.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so Mark tries to pretend that night didn't happen. He tries to act like everything's normal with Jennair, but Jennair cannot stop thinking about it. And one day she tells him that she's like, I know about Meredith. I heard you guys talking and I know you want a future together. And Mark's confused because Jennair knows details about conversations that happened. In private, in their office and after work, conversations that actually happened on a bench in the university where nobody was around.
What is her area of expertise again?
Marketing.
Does she bug his phone?
We'll find out. So Mark's super confused. And then so that one conversation happened on January 1st where he says, I want to leave you. And then he's like, just kidding. No, I don't. That conversation never happened. Mm-hmm. So then on February 5th, Mark has a meeting out of town with Meredith that was supposed to be half a day. And it's like a work meeting. And so Mark's excited because he and Meredith had planned to spend the rest of the day together. And he tells Jennair the meeting is a full day thing. So he's going to be gone and then he'll be back that night. And when he gets home, he's shocked because she's upset. And she's like, He arrives home that night. Jennair seems upset and just goes to bed. Then the next morning, he wakes up and she's incredibly upset and she calls him a liar and she says, your meeting was only half a day, but you spent the rest of the day with Meredith.
She's tracking him.
And Mark, instead of apologizing or anything like that, is like, how do you know? And she says she followed him and saw them kissing. And Mark, instead of arguing or anything, he just leaves. He walks out of the house.
Nice. You can't fight if you're not there. Yeah. That's what Gandhi taught us.
What?
It's a reference to How I Met Your Mother.
Oh, okay. On February 6th, the day after the meeting where they spent the whole day together, Jennair calls Meredith's husband and tells him about the affair. Meredith tells her husband, well, first, she texts Mark, and she's like, your wife called my husband, and I'm about to call you. I need you to play along. And so Meredith calls Mark, and he plays along, and he's like, Jennair's just really upset that I'm working so much, and she's trying to cause trouble, but, she's just, I'm sorry. I'll talk to her. It won't happen again. And nothing is happening between me and Meredith. On February 16th, Jennair makes dinner reservations for her and Mark at a restaurant to celebrate Valentine's Day. And that night after dinner, Jennair decides to tell Mark that she had his phone cloned.
So she gave him a bugged phone, his exact phone?
I don't know how she did it, but she somehow she downloaded everything in his phone onto a new device, and so she could look through everything from emails, text, photos. She essentially copied his phone.
Is it a live feed?
No.
So she only has it up to the date she did it?
Yes.
Okay.
Which explains a lot, but not everything. Like, how would you hear conversations?
Right. That's the more recent information, too.
And so Mark, what an asshole. In the book, he's like, I just had to come clean. But it's like, she just told you she cloned your phone and she read everything. You didn't decide to come clean. You were cornered.
Yeah.
And so he finally tells Jennair, and he says, So he finally decides to tell Jennair, and he's like, I am in love with Meredith. And she's like, are you really willing to throw away our relationship for this? And he's, of course, doesn't give her a straight answer, but agrees to see a marriage counselor. And in an interview, you can watch it on YouTube. It was 2020. The people giving the interview is 2020. And it's just like stood out to me. And he says in the interview, like, we agreed to see a marriage counselor. And then he gives this smirk. And then he says, but for different reasons. And it just gave me like it's like, why? Like, what? It was the weirdest thing. And he doesn't elaborate. Like, it was just this one little blip in this interview that just stood out to me so much. Because, like, what do you mean for different reasons?
What do you think he meant by that?
I don't think he ever... I think for her, it was about saving the relationship. And for him, it was either, like, just getting more time to figure out, like, did he really want to leave her or not? Mm-hmm. Maybe. I don't know. It was weird. It was really weird. And Jennair next goes to... So do you remember, like, Meredith is Mark's boss?
Right.
They are not allowed to be together. On top of them both being married.
Makes sense. Jennair, yeah, like just like within the company. Like,
yeah. So Jennair next goes to their work and reports the affair. So they get separated from working together, and Meredith essentially gets demoted. And throughout this time, there's like an investigation in the university between them being together. And if it's found out that, yeah, they had been dating, they both are like, yeah, we'll get fired. And Mark is like, why would you have done this?
Is he dumb? Like, what do you mean? Why?
Well, he's like, I'm going to lose my job. Why would you have done this? And Jennair is like, she was a higher up. If you tell them you felt coerced, you won't be fired. And in fact, he's actually at this point promoted to Meredith's position, kind of like he's taking part of the team and Meredith has part of the team. So it's essentially a promotion for him at this point. And if he says Meredith had coerced him, he'll get to keep his job and be in a better place.
Wait, who proposed this plan to him? Meredith did?
Jennair.
Oh,
Jennair is telling him to tell the university that Meredith coerced him.
Interesting.
And he's like, I am not going to do that to Meredith. And luckily, Meredith had already been applying to other jobs because they can't go public even if they decide to while they're both working together. Right. So they've both been applying to other jobs just
in case
to see, And Jennair this entire time has continuously called Meredith's husband and emailed him. And at one point she sent him videos and pictures of them together. So the husband's like, okay, she's obviously correct.
Yeah.
And so he files for divorce and he responds to Jennair and he's like, why are you continuously like reaching out to me? I believe you. I filed for divorce. I suggest you do the same. And Jennair responds, she's like, I can't. I have everything to lose and nothing to gain with a divorce because she can't get a job. And Meredith and her husband had only been together, not only, but they'd been married for 9 years. So I think for him, it was a lot, I don't want to say easier. Also, they're younger and it was different situations. And Jennair did not feel like a divorce was in her best interest. On top of still being in love with Mark.
That bugs me, that kind of thinking on her part. There is this mentality in this red pill space.
Red pill is
this group of, it's like this manosphere group of guys who blame women. Who blame women and believe that women are like self-interested and not really capable of true love. Mm-hmm. And one of the things they say is that if you amass enough wealth and status, you can openly cheat on your partner and she will not leave you.
I also think a big part of this, there's actually, spoiler, you're about to find out. So what she's been doing is she has been literally taking his jackets, cutting open the seam and putting recording devices in them. And she does this because he won't admit to her whether he and Meredith have had sex. He won't admit to her that he wants a divorce. He won't say that he wants to be with Meredith. He won't say that he's ending the relationship with Jennair. He's just pulling her along while he's having this affair. And listening, since she had these recording devices, so many things were recorded.
Right.
And Mark had later found all of it in a Google Doc, and he released some of it, and you can listen to them. A lot of them were in this podcast that I wish I had written down. Hold on a second. A lot of them are in this podcast called Bad Bad Thing, and it was season 1. And listening to her and Mark talk is like the worst thing ever, because she will literally say, and she will be like crying and like clearly desperate, and she'll be like, Mark, I just need you to tell me you want this relationship to end so I can move on. And he'll be like, I can't tell you that. And she'll be like, I just need you to tell me like that you want to be with Meredith instead of me. And he'll like be like, I can't tell you that. And she'll be like, so she was like literally telling him, all I need is you to tell me that you want this relationship to end. And he wouldn't tell her.
What does it matter? Like she knows he's cheating on her. She knows he's continuing to do so while denying it.
But she's also willing to work with him on this relationship and go to couples therapy, and he's agreeing to it.
But was she only willing to do so because of her position, her dependence on him?
I think that was definitely a big part of it, but also the fact that Mark kept leading her on.
At what point are you choosing to be led on?
And that person is fucking telling you that they're not willing to end the relationship with you.
You don't need their permission to end the relationship.
He should have given her that.
He should have not cheated.
He should have not cheated too.
He should have done or not done a lot of things. At what point, when you have audio evidence and GPS evidence, and you've cloned his phone and you have text and video, like at what point are you keeping yourself in this prison?
Definitely part of it, but like it's hard. Jennair's been with him for 24 years. They've moved many places together. She moved to Delaware to be with him. She has no friends, no family, no job. And because of that, she was already in a depressed state. So like for her to be in this sensitive place already, and then for Mark to just be gaslighting the shit out of her and telling her that, like, not telling her what she needs to hear to move on, I don't think you can, like, she's definitely not stable. Yeah. So what she's doing isn't logical. So I don't think you can try to apply this, like, logicalness to her in this state. Does that make sense?
That makes sense.
I get what you're saying, and I agree with you, but also, like, I think there's so many circumstances in this situation that, like, Mark just made it so much worse. Yeah,
no doubt. I can't fully wrap my head around, even if she got Mark to say the words, you know, I want to be with Meredith, would she actually accept that?
We'll never know.
Yeah. Because it doesn't actually change her situation. It doesn't somehow make her less financially dependent on him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and she's actually the one who starts to initiate the divorce. And Mark never tells her, like, he's okay with it or that he wants to get divorced. So anyway, so they agreed to couples therapy, and one evening as he's putting on his jacket to go, he feels the recorder. And, you know, after that, you'd think Mark would be, like, able to decide to divorce Jennair and be like, okay, you cloned my phone, you're recording me, you clearly have a GPS in my car because you know where I'm going. And he doesn't. He keeps leading her on. And Meredith gets a new job, which she's super excited about, and they start talking about a future together and all that stuff. And Jennair consults with a lawyer who suggests that she gets a separate bank account. So she does, and she transfers half their money to it while talking to Mark about it. And he agrees. He's like, yeah, that's a good idea. And what Mark doesn't know is that she uses that account to buy things that he has no access to seeing. like, all the recording devices and GPS and a gun. So she had been incredibly anti-gun her entire life, like to the point where she once reported a neighbor for shooting a goose, and because she was so upset that he had killed this animal and that he wasn't supposed to be shooting where he was shooting.
Is she vegetarian?
I actually don't know if she was, but she was a huge animal lover, so I think she might have been. And she, huge animal lover. Mm-hmm. And very anti-gun, as I said. So for her to buy a gun was shocking. And, really outspoken about it. She would post on Facebook about, gun control and all this stuff. And so she bought a gun from a gun store that is literally across the street from where he and Meredith would meet all the time for coffee. Was it a coincidence? Was it a way for her to be she knew Mark would probably look it up and a way to be F you or something? I don't know.
Yeah, could be.
Mm-hmm. And she buys this gun at the end of March. And 4 days, it was either 4 or 7 days before she had gone to buy the gun, she tried to commit suicide by jumping off their building. And Mark stops her. In his book, he talks about how he's so shocked and he pleads for Jennair to get help and whatnot. But in that 2020 interview, he talks about it and he says, yeah, she once tried to commit suicide. And the interviewer is do you think she would have gone through with it? Or do you think she was trying to get attention? He's oh, she's just doing it for attention. I don't think she would have gone through with it. So yeah, whatever. But regardless, she was not okay. And now Jennair has a gun. And not only does she have a gun, but she takes shooting lessons. While Mark is at work, she goes to the shooting range and takes shooting lessons without him knowing. And on March 27th, 2018, she goes and buys the gun and she has it and takes shooting lessons all the way until April 23rd, 2018. On April 23rd, she cleans her entire apartment spotless, writes a 12-page suicide note to her family, gets food from this nice gourmet grocery store, fills up her gas tank, and then goes to Meredith's house, waits for Meredith to arrive home, shoots her, and then shoots herself. In the 12-page note, she writes, "She is a parasite, a blood-sucking, life-sucking parasite, and she needs to be destroyed. It's all I can think about. I just want to blow her face off and destroy her. I want Mark to have lasting memories of the visuals of us both like that. It's all I dream about." And a quote from Mark in his book, "The two women I loved most in this world were gone, and I didn't have the opportunity to properly and formally say goodbye to either of them. So instead, I made room in my life to say hello to them every day. Whenever I climb into Meredith's car, whenever Gypsy crawls onto my lap for affection, knowing at least one life has been spared." So after Meredith had been murdered and his wife committed suicide, he went and he bought a car that was exactly like the one Meredith owned, that he also mentions was his dream car. So it's were you really honoring Meredith's death, or were you using it as an excuse to buy your dream car? I don't know. And Gypsy was
one of the Goldens?
No, it was Jennair's soul cat. It was a cat that they also had owned. And yeah, so he's but also this is dark and I don't fully agree with it. But in that 12-page note, she had asked for Gypsy to be put down and buried with her. And he refuses. He's she's not of sound mind. Gypsy's not old enough to be put down. So he keeps her. But I don't know. And so I don't know. When he says knowing at least one life had been spared, is he talking about the cat or is he talking about himself?
I don't know. And I wonder if he's being cryptic on purpose.
Yeah, I don't know. But that whole paragraph, it's all it mentions them, but it's all about him. And that's the way the whole book was. And if you read the reviews on the book, they're all the same, like how I feel. And I'll end with a quote from the psychiatrist that Jennair had seen. When she would come here, she'd get worked up, angry. But in hindsight, she was actually psychotic. She just hid it really well. And there's a lot of controversy about whether or not Jennair had like a mental illness that was undiagnosed. But it seems the consensus to be that she did not. She was just a woman who was depressed and angry, and like by mental illness I mean like being diagnosed with bipolar or schizophrenia. But they think that she was just the way that she was able to hide the fact that she had a gun. She was seeing that divorce coach, she was seeing a psychiatrist, she was seeing so many people, and she hid it from her family. Nobody knew she had a gun. Mm-hmm. And the fact that she was able to hide that so well, and hide the fact that she was capable of doing something like this, everybody's just shocked by that. And it doesn't seem like she had any of those mental illnesses.
I would actually disagree with that.
Really?
I would say there have been several cases where people who are on psychiatric holds or in mental health institutions, because they are a risk to themselves, get granted temporary leave, mm-hmm. usually for like a big family event. Mm-hmm. And the mental health professionals can be like on the fence about if they are or are not ready. And these people go on to hurt themselves. Mm-hmm. Now they pass certain checks that they won't, but those people are mentally ill. I think certain actions like suicide or murder tend to be the symptom of some sort of mental illness.
I was listening to an interview with a psychiatrist, not her psychiatrist, but just one who mm-hmm. knew a lot about the case. And they were saying like, you know, a lot of people think to commit murder, you have to have a mental illness. And they're like, that's not the case. I wish I listened to it a while ago. I wish I'd remembered more, but they went really into depth about why they didn't think she had one. I don't know. We'll never know, because she wasn't really ever treated for one or like actually in therapy for one. It was mostly about the divorce, and who knows.
It comes off like the claim is because she could plan, that she must have not had a mental illness, which I don't know if that's true.
Yeah. I mean, she could have been undiagnosed. We don't know.
Like the Unabomber planned. Was he mentally ill? Like, supposedly what kicked him off was a psychotic break. But I have a hard time believing that just because you can plan things out, that means you aren't broken in some way. Yeah.
Well, she was obviously broken a little bit. And this all happened too the day before her scheduled surgery. Mm-hmm. So she had, taken that into account too. It's crazy. And what was I going to say? I lost my train of thought. I don't know. What was I going to say?
We were talking about whether or not someone who premeditates a murder.
Oh, yeah. There was this one point after she had gotten the gun. So after she's gone, Mark goes through this whole entire, like, trying to find out everything about the case, like what she was doing. And like, she left on the table her bank login information so he could find it. And then from there, he kind of went into this like crazy looking into everything. Like he looked through all her purchases to see where she was each day and like when she was following them and when she wasn't, and when she lied about where she was to him. And he gets into her computer and he finds that Google Drive with like a ton, all of the recordings and of audio, and there's videos that she took. And one of the videos was actually her videoing him while he was sleeping on the couch. And he like can't figure it out. He's like, why did she just like take a minute-long video of me sleeping? So he sends it to, and there's like this weird click in the background he hears, and he sends it to a friend. And the friend is like, that is the
hammer.
No, it's the actual gun going off with no bullets in it. And so it's like, was she playing Russian roulette? Did she have a bullet in there? Or Was she just like so upset she was just aiming an empty gun at him? I don't know. And then at one point, she took these like video diaries where she like, it was like a selfie and she just talked to the camera.
Yeah.
And it's almost like she wanted to do this so that people would hear her side. And which she actually says in her 12-page note, she ends it with like, please share all of this with like people so that they know what drove me to this or something like that. But anyways, in one of the videos she took, she essentially says that if she isn't able to do the Meredith suicide plan, she's going to kill Mark and then herself. That was like her plan B.
I would have preferred she do neither. But if she
No.
But if she had to do one, plan B seems more appropriate.
She literally, I think her thought process was like, how can I hurt him the most?
I mean, I guess if you consider death is the end of pain, then I see her point. But I don't know. I truly don't know if Mark is, like right now, Mark is alive. I honestly don't know if he's hurting.
I think he's hurting from all the bad book reviews he got.
You know what I mean? Like, I don't know if he's that devastated.
I don't either, because he's given so many interviews, like so many.
Yeah.
And he wrote a book and like, I'm curious, like, did he do these things to try and change the narrative about him because he's pretty darn hated on the internet universe if you Google him? He is a victim. I agree. There is no right for Jennair to go and murder somebody. That was not okay. But he is pretty darn hated. So it's like, was he trying to change that narrative? Or I don't know. It's just weird. I don't know.
I'm not sure I know either.
Yeah.
I'm still stuck on people, psychiatrists saying she wasn't mentally ill. Like these are the behaviors of someone who's not doing well. At the very least, she was depressed.
Yes.
And depression affects your perception of the world.
I agree with that.
And your actions.
Yeah.
So how can anyone, a professional, say didn't have a mental illness?
It was their opinion. I mean, I don't know. They have more experience than us.
I know, which is why I am baffled.
It was just...
Look, people get cheated on every day.
Mm-hmm.
Not all of them kill, one, their partner, but two, that partner's a fair partner.
Right, but also not everybody's in such a sensitive state as Jennair. She was in a new place. She had no friends. She had no support system. And she was scheduled for a pretty serious surgery where who knows what it would lead. Like going into the surgery, she didn't know what she was going to find coming out. And her one support system in the whole world was not her support system. And she was losing it. And she was desperate to get him back. And I don't know. I think, obviously she could have had a mental illness. We can't definitively say she didn't.
Right.
But I think the person who said that, the psychiatrist who said that she didn't think that Jennair did, I think they were taking all of that into account, as well as they did watch a lot of the video footage of Jennair. So I don't know. The video footage is very interesting because she does seem, a lot of the times, not always, but a lot of the time she did seem pretty logical, which was interesting.
What do you mean by that?
She would be like, he's just not telling me the truth. So I'm going to, these are not direct quotes. She's like, I'm going to, take things into my own hands and find the truth. Like if I have to put a GPS on his car to find out if he's lying, like that's what I have to do because he has lied to me so many times. I can't believe him. And so like you listen to her and you're like, yeah, I get that. Like it is absolutely insane putting a freaking GPS on somebody's car, but listening to her, you're like, I understand why you did that.
I mean, I understand it too, but you don't. Like once you're at that point, that relationship is over.
You think, but Mark wouldn't like say it was. And she was like, maybe there's hope. And obviously she didn't think that fully, because if there was hope, she wouldn't have killed herself. So I think on some level she was like, yeah, there is no hope. And I just want to hurt him as bad as, I don't know. It's such a wild case.
That all screams to me someone who is not in the right state of mind.
Yeah.
And you can have perfectly logical reasons for not being in the right state of mind. That doesn't mean you don't have a mental illness that is coloring your view of the world and your actions.
But would it be normal to be diagnosed with a mental illness at age 47?
Normal is a strong word. Depression can happen at any time. I mean, a lot of mental health issues start in your 20s, and a lot of mental health issues go undiagnosed.
Yeah.
So this could have been a long-term thing she was dealing with.
It's true.
And none of this is to say she is more or less guilty based on this. But there might be a conversation to be had around, since both Betty Broderick, who we just covered, and now Janine, are essentially women who were cheated on and arguably driven to extreme measures. Should there be some sort of criminality on the person, on the spouse whose partner goes on to kill other people?
Interesting.
To rephrase that, if you take measures to drive someone towards certain violent actions, should you be culpable, even if you don't do them yourself?
Similar to like how those parents with the child who shot up the school, and they were the ones who gave him the gun, and they were charged. It's like they didn't do the shooting, but they supplied the gun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And this is a more complicated situation, of course, because it's all subjective. It's all going to be very much circumstantial evidence from the ground up. I don't even know if you could prove it. I don't know if would this be tried as something else, but it doesn't seem fully right that, I don't know. If I was Mark's defense attorney, let's say this goes to trial, I would argue, is there any evidence to suggest that even if Mark had told her, we're done, he's going with Meredith, that she wouldn't have just done this anyway?
No. There's literally no way to know.
Exactly. Which is why I think these things can't be ever prosecuted.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Because as a juror, I'm going to say, well, if this is beyond a reasonable doubt, I have doubt, so not guilty.
Yeah. So what a depressing case. I think this might be the last one for a while. I do like this. Just kind of downers.
What do you think? What if, let's play a game we might cut out called Who Should Have Died?
No.
Oh, okay.
Absolutely not. I'm not playing that game. Nobody should have died.
But if you had to pick one.
No. Nobody should have died. Absolutely not. And yeah, that's it. That's my answer.
All right. Coward.
Oh my goodness.
It's so, not that other cases are unsatisfying or satisfying in any way.
Yeah.
But it leaves me with a certain feeling like things aren't done. Like it is, all of this is just unjust. Like from top to bottom. Yeah,
it's horrible. Meredith is only 32 or 33. Like,
yeah. And I go back to, same with, I forgot her name. What was?
Caitlin Armstrong. Betty Broderick.
No, Betty's husband's new wife.
Linda?
I think it was Linda, yeah. Meredith in this story is not exactly an innocent party. She didn't deserve to get killed, but she also knowingly pursued a married man while married, and
it's a complicated situation. It's what one would defer to as a pickle.
But I don't think it's complicated. I think it's a lot of shitty people doing shitty things.
That's what I mean by like Meredith's husband's the only one that's like, oh yeah.
Yeah. He just divorced her and left.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he stayed like amicable with her too. They like didn't have a nasty divorce. They were like agreeing on things, and because he just is normal. He knew their marriage was in the rocky parts. He's just, yeah.
Well, any parting words?
Thank you for listening, everybody. I don't know. Do we have any uplifting things to say to end this episode?
Just some general advice. Never
Cheat.
cheat and never have your spouse be your sole support system.
That's true. It is important to have friends,
Yes.
even if you're introverted.
Yes.
All right, cool. Oh my gosh, it's Sunday.
It is.
I forgot to check my football lineup.
You'll live.
Oh well. Cool.
All
if you're
right.
in fantasy football, check your lineup, guys. There's a lot of people out.
And follow us on Instagram. Sign up for Patreon. We're going to be posting exclusive content on there. And thank you all for listening.
Thank you.